Did you know that if we are not aware of and managing our thoughts, we are putting our health at risk? After years of studying and imaging the brain, Dr. Daniel Amen shares, whenever we have an angry thought, a critical thought, a hopeless or helpless thought, our brain releases chemicals that affect us negatively. Likewise, whenever we have a happy thought, a hopeful thought, a kind or grateful thought, our brain releases another set of chemicals that affect us positively. I have learned to recognize when I've had a negative thought, and the reaction I have physiologically is a wave of nausea, a change in my heart rate, and often a need to or a desire to breathe deeply to calm myself. Okay, so when that happens to me physiologically, I think, oh, what was the thought that led to that? Okay, likewise or similarly, whenever we have a grateful, happy, hopeful thought, that other set of chemicals such as dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, they physiologically put us in a calm, relaxed, warm, comfortable state, which is much healthier over time for our brains and our bodies. Okay, another interesting side note is that when we are not aware of and managing our thoughts, our brains have a tendency to go to the negative. The reason they go to the negative will be discussed in future videos, but for now, just realize that if we aren't aware and doing something, our thoughts are going to be negative. So I learned this, like the light bulb came on for me one summer, late morning. I was out mowing the lawn, and I was feeling a little bit of frustration and righteous indignation toward my husband, who was in the house doing his thing, whatever it was, but it wasn't checking off all the things on the list that I had for us to do that day. So I'm feeling a little frustration out there. And as I'm mowing the lawn under this pine tree, I'm thinking, Melanie, this is not a healthy way to be thinking, because as I'm out mowing, I became aware that I was in a negative thought pattern cycle, because I was feeling it in my body. My body was tense. My thoughts were racing, kind of just perpetuating negativity. And I had the wherewithal, thankfully, because I've been studying the brain and mindfulness. I had the wherewithal to recognize it and to say, okay, this is not how I want to think. So I started generating other possibilities that were challenging the thought that I was thinking. And some of these possibilities were, and I wrote these down here so I wouldn't forget this. The possibilities were, maybe he was tired after a long week of work. Okay, I hadn't shared with him my list of 100 things that I wanted to do on Saturday the night before. Okay, his list of things for that day were different and possibly even better or more legitimate than mine were. And maybe his nervous system just needed a break. So as I'm introducing these other thoughts, I'm also working on the way I'm managing my nervous system. And I began to breathe slowly and deeply, intentionally calming my mind and my body, and taking my heart to a pace that was comfortable and healthy. And there was plenty of room for swelling, for expanding, for entertaining these new thoughts. And it was super interesting to think, Melanie, so many of the thoughts you've been having throughout life, they're probably not the best thoughts and thought patterns. And you've always thought you were right, maybe not saying it out loud, but you always thought your views were right and correct. So this was a real wake-up call to me that day. It was like, wow, I could have been wrong so many times, because I know that I've often felt physiological effects of the thoughts that I had. So awareness of our thoughts and the choice to self-reflect and change our thought patterns from the negative to the positive sets us on a path of growth and maturity. And even at my age, I still have some growing up to do. So I love this. This can be described as, quote, a change of mind, knowledge, spirit, heart, even breath. It's a fresh view about God, oneself, and the world. A coming out of one's small mind to a new mind, even a new way of breathing. Isn't that fantastic? Coming out of one's small mind to a new mind, even a new way of breathing. And it is neuroplasticity in action. We're often stuck in how we've always been. Like neuropathways, many of our thoughts and behaviors are automatic. We're not aware of them. We've thought that way for so long, they just keep going and going in that cycle, and we pretty much don't notice it. And if we do, we just assume we're right because that's how we've always thought and how we've always functioned. We've been comfortable with it. Those thoughts have served us for a very long time. I remember thinking about this a few years back. You know, Javert in Les Mis is like the villain and no one we like, but what a wake-up call it was for me when I thought, I'm very much like Javert. Because Javert thought he was right. He wasn't like an evil man trying to do evil. He was so obsessed with the thoughts that he thought were right that he couldn't see the light. And so often that's how we are. So often that's how I've been. Yes, he was a man stuck in the wrong rightness. Justice is good, yes, but he went way overboard. He was stuck in the wrong rightness and wasn't aware that there was another way of thinking. So we can say to us, hey, this is who I am and what I know, and my intentions are good. So we don't consider our thinking could be flawed. So we keep going in this default mode that has been our pattern of thinking for so very long. Okay, so a few thoughts on neuroplasticity. So our brain is the dynamic connected power grid. There are billions of pathways lighting up every time we think, feel, or do something. And these roads are so well traveled that there are habits, there are established ways of thinking, there are actions and thoughts that come automatically because we've thought them so very many times. So every time we think a certain way and practice a particular task, feel a specific emotion, we strengthen this road or this neural pathway. And it becomes easier and easier for our brains to travel this way. It's even automatic or subconscious. But say we become aware, or we decide to be aware, hey, maybe the way I'm thinking isn't the best way I could be thinking. And maybe we can become aware that it does affect us physiologically, that generally we're not feeling a lot of joy in our life. Our relationships aren't as good as they could be. We're having sleepless nights with worry and concern. We recognize these things, and we're willing to recognize those things and think there's a better way. There can be a better way. We can think differently. Then that's the first step of neuroplastic change, because then we are willing to think a different thought, learn a different task, choose to react differently to a situation. And when we do this, we start carving a new road, a new neural pathway. And the more and more we travel that road, our brains begin to use this pathway, and the old pathway gets used less and less. This process of rewiring your brain by forming new connections with new thoughts, patterns of behavior, and weakening old ones is neuroplasticity in action. The good news is we all have the ability to rewire our brains. If you've ever changed a bad habit or thought of something different, you're carving a new neural pathway and you're experiencing neuroplasticity firsthand. With repeated direction and attention toward desired change, we can rewire our brain. So a few years back, my birthday and Mother's Day was approaching, and my daughter-in-law, Krista, who'd been living with us for a few months with her little family, decided that for a gift for me, she would reorganize my kitchen. She'd been sharing it with me for over 3 months, and obviously she saw a better way. So she bought organizers and labels, and she went at it. I'd been stuck in a disarray of spice and pots and pan cupboards for 18 years, and I was quite comfortable with it until she helped me see a new way. And I thought, why didn't I do this long ago? God does the same thing for us. He steps into our lives, often through other people, with a wake-up call, which I come to realize is a tender mercy. Because I can be stuck in good when I could have had better, or even with routine change, best. And the best is Jesus. The best is seeing myself, my family, the world, and God as Jesus would, through his mind and through his heart. And I've asked myself, how could I have been so wrong in my rightness or right in my wrongness for so long? So this week, I give you a challenge. Pay attention or be aware of where your mind goes when you're in default mode. And that could be on a long drive, a commute to or from work. It could be while you're doing dishes or other household tasks, working in the yard, whatever, shoveling, whatever you're doing. Be aware of what your thought pattern is and where it's going. Be aware of your body and what you're feeling as a response to those thoughts, because you will discover the more you do this that your thoughts are very connected to the way your body is feeling. And then ask yourself, is there another way to think about this situation or whatever this thought that has happened? As you think of other ways to think of it, other possibilities that are more hopeful, helpful, kind, productive, breathe and calm your nervous system. Disengage your sympathetic nervous system and engage your parasympathetic nervous system by breathing deeply, filling the cavity around your heart with plenty of room for your heart to expand, to grow, to beat. This awareness throughout the week will be the first step in creating healthier, productive neuropathways that will also lead to a healthier, happier, more hopeful life. Thanks for joining me. If you'd like to hear why I'm so passionate about this, be sure to check out Faith to Heal the Brain on the Neuronurturer YouTube channel. Have a great week.